Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Elliot. I am the Program Vice President of the Infrastructure and Ops team at research firm IDC. And today we're going to be speaking about the adoption of BizOps to accelerate digital transformation. And we're really excited. We've spoken to a lot of customers who have really doubled down on this theme of BizOps to think through what type of business outcomes they can drive and how it changes the dynamic of their vendor relationships. So when we really started digging into this, we found a couple key themes where enterprise IT organizations really challenged to drive leadership results, to manage rising complexity, the rate of change, and scale. And we found that north of 90% of organizations are in a multi-cloud era. They're managing multiple clouds, private, hybrid, public, PaaS, SaaS services. They have tremendous amounts of organizational change and a tremendous amount of thinking through the traditional and modern estates that they've invested in and how they're going to drive business innovation and business outcomes from each of those investment themes. We've also found that the leadership teams are under increasing pressure to deliver better business and customer experiences, think about product innovation and deliver innovation for the business, and really drive process and tool integration that continues to excel at operating expense reduction, at product innovation, and overall more dynamic business outcomes. As we developed the BizOps framework, we really had a couple key swim lanes that IT executives and their teams communicated with us. One was clearly around data-driven decision support mechanisms. And this was specifically around collecting the vast pools of information from across the infrastructure, from across the applications, compiling it, and bringing a real thought process around the analytics that they want to apply to drive business outcomes to increase the decision-making process across business and across IT questions. The other key theme we've seen is really this notion of DevOps and continuous improvement. Now, many of you are already deploying DevOps or agile methodologies. We've seen the extension of those practices to really drive continuous measurement and strategic business planning so organizations can improve their decision-making. They can improve the decision-making around tools, around process integration, around architectures, and have a method to not only measure the projects and the support mechanisms that they're driving for customer success, but to also have an ongoing feedback process for understanding what to measure, who's responsible, who are the stakeholders, what are the key processes involved, and how do these mechanisms drive the right business outcomes. And then finally, we've seen a lot of organizations drive digital transformation and recognize that their teams have to move at a faster pace, at a faster cadence to drive the business outcomes. Specifically, we've seen executives start to consider metrics around speed, agility, cost optimization, and even go so far as to really rethink the procurement mechanisms and rethink their vendor relationships and what their expectations are out of those relationships. There's no doubt here that there's a tremendous synergy in terms of driving alignment between the digital transformation initiatives, between what the business is expecting from outcomes, and how the operational capacity of the broader IT organization can drive these outcomes as we move forward. Now let's double click into what does BizOps mean? And we've really seen in our research a mechanism around this theme of continuous strategy and measurement to drive business outcomes. So as many of you have adopted Agile and DevOps, we have seen extensions that executives have driven through the development processes to drive not only consistency around automated continuous integration, continuous improvement, thinking about how to drive more automated testing, collecting the information for delivery, and then driving measurement into the process, into the workflows to understand, well, how is this impacting our application strategy? How is it impacting our operational strategy? And what's it really mean for the business outcomes that we're expected to deliver? And of course, a lot of these outcomes can be around faster cycle times, such as deployment frequency. Many of them we've seen around mean time to repair, mean time to failure, performance management. We've also seen a lot of executives think about what are the business implications or metrics we should be looking at. For example, time to market or operational expense reduction. We've seen a lot of companies take a look at how does it increase net promoter score or profit margins? How does this drive more efficient and effective development metrics and development productivity, as an example? So the net of this is that the extensions from DevOps and Agile have been able to drive not only more automation across processes and more integration of those processes, but the ability to have continuous feedback mechanisms so that whether you're on a DevOps team, infrastructure platform, you're an SRE, whether you're an executive leading one of these teams across infrastructure and ops or development, that you have line of sight visibility into the feedback that's being collected from the customers, and you're able to act on that much more quickly because of the integration and because of the automation. We're also finding that a lot of customers recognize that these data pools that were traditionally separate or teams that didn't really collaborate before now are really, it's a requirement to collaborate, and it's also an increasingly important requirement to bring this data together, to apply automation, to think about the type of analytics you can apply, and to help drive a faster, more effective decision-making process that's data-driven. And as we all know, these are very complex processes, from application development through to operational management and performance management. There are lots of teams involved, and we're finding more and more that as companies think about automation, as they think about an intentional architecture they want to put together from a tools and process standpoint, and they think about the stakeholders who are responsible for these processes, the more you can collect the data, bring it together in a unified fashion, present it in terms of analytics to the different stakeholders in the context that they expect, the more effective these processes become. And that's the whole theme around BizOps and this notion of continuous strategy and continuous feedback mechanisms. Now, how does this fit into strategic vendor partnerships? Well, other interesting research we found were that business and IT partnerships require tighter vendor engagement model. Now, clearly, we've seen this as the use of multi-cloud environments continues to explode. We've seen more and more executives rethink their vendor partnerships and how they engage with their partners. As we just talked about, the themes of collaboration across people, process, technologies, the common themes around business outcomes that are expected can be now accelerated because of a great vendor relationship and engagement model. And so as more and more teams that maybe traditionally didn't work together now are collaborating, are using similar tools, are using similar data pools, and driving towards the same business outcomes, now vendors can help drive a tighter collaborative model through integrated tools, but also through their individual, very unique engagement models. And on top of that, we're seeing more CIOs are driving transformation across domains. And they're not only thinking about those domains in silos, as we've done 5, 10 years ago. Now these executives are really thinking about, well, how do I apply AIOps, continuous testing, agile, automation, security, and IT service management? How do I apply integration across these processes? How do I think about the data pools that were traditionally separate? What's the right data to bring together to drive the common business outcome? So we're seeing more and more CIOs think about this with regards to platform, think about this with regards to the type of analytics, think about it in terms of a common data model, And then most importantly, think about it, how they apply this to their organizational structures that they've executed on. Now, we all know there's a lot of old models out there in terms of enterprise license agreements, pricing agreements, and just traditional vendor engagement models that have now become increasingly obsolete, or they just present significant challenges to the digital transformation objectives that you have. Let's talk about a couple of these. Well, first and foremost, as we know with traditional ELAs, there's really significant capital expense lines. So customers really have to understand how much they have to pay up front, which are traditionally high, and then they also have to be very good at predicting the number of licenses that they'll need for a particular project. And as we all know, product forecasting has been really, really difficult in terms of understanding what you'll need for a particular project, particularly when business dynamics change so quickly. So besides the high capital expense and the importance of product forecasting, these have become more and more inhibitors of digital transformation projects and of really accelerating the use of agile and DevOps practices. On top of that, it's also been very hard to have multiple teams settle on which products to use. So the product usage side, in terms of understanding what you need to pay for, what the costs are, and the predictability of these costs have been very challenging with traditional models. On top of that, as we all know, it's been very hard traditionally to have a license situation where you can actually reallocate license fees onto another product area. These traditional license challenges have really inhibited the ability and flexibility to drive a reallocation of a particular license onto another area where the project may be much more important, much more critical to the business. And then finally, we talk about multiple contracts. Now, how many times have your organization dealt with a vendor and you've got multiple contracts with one vendor just because they span different product capability areas? So that becomes an inhibitor, as well as it really drives more of a transactional relationship. So the net of it is we've got traditional challenges here with these traditional models, and it presents high business risks, and it really doesn't have a common aligned set of outcomes where both the vendor and the customer are aligned around adoption, are aligned on specific sets of business outcomes, and can really have a tight relationship that drives the outcomes, and it's a win-win for both the customer and the vendor. So we've got a new model that's emerged. In fact, Broadcom has created it, and they call it the Broadcom Portfolio License Agreement, or PLA. And it's pretty dynamic because what it does for customers is it's really designed to deliver an integrated set of BizOps capabilities to drive specific, well-defined business outcomes. It's also designed to really drive a strategic partnership delivering increased flexibility and an attractive alternative to the traditional enterprise licensing and the challenges we just discussed. There's two different types for customers to think about. Number one is a broad enterprise PLA, which provides access to the entire enterprise software delivery portfolio for Broadcom, so the entire ESD portfolio. The second one is a solution-focused PLA. It allows for specific access to a segment of the ESD portfolio. So this includes value ops, DevOps, AIOps, automation, or API management. And under each one of those themes is a bucket of tools and solutions that you would gain access to through the solution-focused PLA. So with that, I wanted to thank you for listening. We appreciate it. And if you want to learn more about BizOps, you can read the IDC white paper and click on the link below. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.